and atheists, not just the Southerner, but also the Northerner. He led with words, but he also led with deeds. He also led by example. He led by marching and going to jail and suffering threats and beatings and being away from his family. He led by taking a stand against a war, knowing full well that it would diminish his popularity. He led by challenging our economic structures, understanding that it would cause discomfort. Dr. King understood that unity cannot be won on the cheap, that we would have to earn it through great effort and determination. That's the unity, the hard-earned unity that we need right now. That is the effort, the determination that can transform blind optimism into hope. You know, people have remarked on the fact that I talk about hope a lot in my campaign. You know, they tease me a little bit. Some have been scornful. They say, oh, he's talking about hope again. He's so idealistic. He's so naive. He's a hope monger. That's okay. It's true. I talk about hope, Pastor. I talk about it a lot. Because the odds of me standing here today are so small, so remote, and I couldn't have gotten here without some hope. You know, my daddy left me when I was 2 years old. I needed some hope to get here. I was raised by a single mother. I needed some hope to get here. I got in trouble when I was a teenager. Did some things folks don't like to talk about. I needed some hope to get here. I wasn't born into money or great wealth or great privilege or status. I was given love, an education, and some hope. That's what I got. That's my birthright. So I talk about hope. I put hope on my campaign signs. Doesn't even have my name on them sometimes. Just says hope. Folks don't know who they're voting for, but it makes them feel good. Say, you know, huh? I spoke about hope at the Democratic Convention. I wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope. And so I'm puzzled then when people, some of the other candidates, make a mockery of the idea. They say I'm peddling false hopes. Get a reality check, they tell me. And I have to try to understand what they're saying. The implication is that if you are hopeful, that you somehow must be engaging in wishful thinking. Your head must be in the clouds. That you must be passive and just sit back and wait for things to happen to you. That seems to be the implication. And so I have to explain to people that's not what hope is. Hope is not blind optimism. Hope is not ignorance of the barriers and hurdles and hazards that stand in your way. Hope's just the opposite. I know how hard it will be to provide health care to every single American. Insurance companies, drug companies, they don't want to give up their profits. I know it won't be easy to have an energy policy that makes sense for America because the oil companies like writing the energy bills. I know that alleviating poverty or making sure all our children can learn or eliminating the scourge of racism in our society, none of those things lend themselves to simple solutions. I know because I fought on the streets as a community organizer in poor neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago, alongside those without jobs or without prospects for the future. I have fought in the courts as a civil rights attorney for those who had been denied opportunity on the job or denied access to the ballot box. I've seen good legislation die because, well, I've seen that too. I've seen good legislation die because good intentions weren't enough, because they weren't fortified with a political majority and political will. I've seen this country's judgment clouded by fear. I know how easily a country can be misled when it is afraid. I know how hard it is. Everybody here understands how difficult it is to bring about true change, change that we can believe in. But I also know this, that nothing in this country worthwhile has ever happened except somebody somewhere decided to hope. That's how this country was founded, because a group of patriots decided they were going to take on the British Empire. Nobody was putting their money on them. That's how slaves and abolitionists resisted that evil system. That's how a new president was able to chart a course to ensure that this nation would no longer remain half slave and half free. That's how the greatest generation defeated fascism and overcame a Great Depression. That's how women won the right to vote. That's how workers won the right to organize. That's how young people on freedom rides. And they marched and they sat in and they were beat and fire hoses were set on them and dogs were set on them. And some went to jail and some died for freedom's cause. That's what hope is. Imagining and then fighting for and struggling for and sometimes dying for what didn't seem possible before. There's nothing naive about that. There are no false hopes in that. I don't believe in false hopes. Imagine if John F. Kennedy had looked up at the moon and said, well, that's too far. False hopes, we can't go there. If Dr. King had stood on the Lincoln Memorial and said, y'all go home, we can't overcome. There's no such thing as false hopes. But what I know deep in my heart is that we cannot bring about change unless we are unified, unless we do it together. Change does not happen from the top down in America or anywhere else. It happens from the bottom up. It happens because ordinary people dream extraordinary things. It's because all of you decide that change must come. That I know. It wasn't just one voice. It wasn't just one voice that shouted out before the walls of Jericho. All the voices came together. A chorus of voices. That's what gives me hope. Not just those who ascend to high office, but the changes that are happening in ordinary places. The stories that give me my hope don't happen in the spotlight. When I think about Dr. King, I suspect he was sustained not by having dinner with presidents, not by getting a Nobel Peace Prize, but coming back to church and seeing the mothers of the church and the deacons those who maintained their dignity were standing up straight in the face of injustice. That's where he drew his hope. He saw God in their faces. Those stories don't happen on a presidential stage. They happen in the quiet corners of our lives. They happen in the moments we least expect. So let me close by giving you an example of one of those stories. There is a young woman, 23 years old, white woman, named Ashley Bai, who organizes for our campaign in Florence, South Carolina. Now, Ashley has been working to organize mostly black folks. She's in Florence, South Carolina. She's been doing it since the beginning of the campaign. And the other day, she had set up a roundtable discussion where everyone around was telling their story about who they were and why they were there. And so Ashley explained, she started things off by explaining why she was there. And she explained that when she was 9 years old, her mother got cancer. And because she had to miss a day of work, she was let go. And she lost her health care. And then she had to file for bankruptcy. They were on hard times. And that's when Ashley, 9 years old at the time, decided she had to do something to help her mom. And she knew that food was one of their most expensive costs. They didn't have a lot of money. Ashley lived in a poor household. And so Ashley convinced her mother that she really liked and really wanted to eat more than anything else mustard and relish sandwiches. She had heard that condiments like mustard and relish were cheap. And she concocted in her own mind at the age of 9 that she would convince her mother that that's the only thing she wanted to eat every day, because she figured that would be a way of saving money for the family and helping them alleviate their hardships. So she did this for a year until her mom got better. And in that roundtable, she told everyone that the reason she joined our campaign was so that she could help millions of other children in the country who want and need to help their parents too. She had heard me speak about my mother having cancer and having to worry about maybe not getting the health care she needed for a pre-existing condition, and she had connected with that. She thought maybe Barack would fight for my mother. And if he would fight for my mother, then maybe I will fight alongside him. That's what had brought her to Florence. So Ashley finishes her story and then goes around the room and asks everyone else why they're supporting the campaign. They all have different stories and different reasons. Some bring up specific issues. Some talk about, I'm upset about affirmative action. Some talk about, I want to see more jobs in the community. Some are frustrated about trade. Some just like me. So they all got a bunch of different reasons. And finally, at the end of this discussion, they come to this elderly black man. He's been sitting there quiet the whole time. Hasn't been saying a word. And Ashley asks him, why is he there? And he doesn't bring up a specific issue. He does not say health care or the economy. He doesn't talk about the Iraq War. He doesn't say anything about education. He doesn't say that he's there because he likes Barack Obama or he's proud of the possibility of the first African-American president. He simply says to everyone in the room, I am here because of Ashley. I am here because of this young girl and the fact that she's willing to fight for what she believes in. And that reminds me that I still have some fight left in me.